Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's good to see you. We're here today to talk about everybody's favorite subject, mastering our use of technology. I recently got a book. It's one of a new book about the issues of the addictive technology of the internet, etc. The book is called Irresistible. It's by someone named Adam Alter. And I've read about half of it. I haven't read the whole book. Not necessarily my first recommendation for everybody to read the particulars of the book. It's interesting, fascinating. We can have some other recommendations later. But I want to start by reading to you just the first couple of pages. At an Apple event in January 2010, Steve Jobs unveiled the iPad. What this device does, quote unquote, what this device does is extraordinary. Thank you. It offers the best way to browse the web, way better than a laptop and way better than a smartphone. It's an incredible experience. It's phenomenal for mail. It's a dream to type on. For 90 minutes, Jobs explained why the iPad was the best way to look at photos, listen to music, take classes on iTunes U, browse Facebook, play games, and navigate thousands of apps. He believed everyone should own an iPad, but he refused to let his kids use the device. In late 2010, Jobs told the New York Times journalist Nick Bilton that his children had never used the iPad. We limit how much technology our kids use in the home. Bilton discovered that other tech giants imposed similar restrictions. Chris Anderson, the former editor of Wired, enforced strict time limits on every device in his home because we have seen the dangers of technology firsthand. His 5 children were never allowed to use screens in their bedrooms. Evan Williams, a founder of Blogger, Twitter, and Medium, bought hundreds of books for his 2 young sons, but refused to give them an iPad. And Leslie Gold, the founder of an analytics company, imposed a strict no screen time during the week rule on her kids. She softened her stance only when they needed computers for schoolwork. Walter Isaacson, who ate dinner with the Jobs family while researching his biography of Steve Jobs, told Bilton that no one ever pulled out an iPad or computer. The kids did not seem addicted at all to devices. It seemed as if the people producing tech products were following the cardinal rule of drug dealing. Never get high on your own supply. According to Tristan Harris, and with this I will stop reading from this, a design ethicist, the problem isn't that people lack willpower. It's that there are 1,000 people on the other side of the screen whose job it is to break down the self-regulation you have. The people who are defining and designing and creating the products, hardware and software, that we're here today this morning because we're finding a bit challenging, to put it mildly. Their job is to make it challenging. Their job is to hook us. And that's why the people who are doing it and know what they're out for and what they're after are very, very careful about partaking of the stuff themselves. Last week, Melinda Gates published an op-ed in the Washington Post. Melinda Gates is the Rebbitzin of Bill Gates. And she herself, right, they met at work. She worked for Microsoft. The headline of the article is, "I spent my career in technology. I wasn't prepared for its effect on my kids." And she writes, "When my youngest child was born in 2002, the flip phone was still the coolest piece of tech you could get. Now I'm told that all 3 of my children are part of what demographers are calling iGen. I spent my career at Microsoft trying to imagine what technology could do, and still I wasn't prepared for smartphones and social media." And she writes a thoughtful article sharing some of her tips, some of her experiences, some of the things which she saw. So first of all, I want to just throw out for you a few very important introductory notes to this discussion. Number one is that I'm not technophobic. I don't hate technology. I think technology is providing us with a tool with a lot of wonderful benefits. I have a smartphone. It's off right now. I wouldn't mind if you guys did the same thing. I was debating whether I would do like I've done at some other occasions and walk around with this basket and ask you to deposit it, but I didn't want to have to deal with the shakes and the other withdrawal symptoms around the table. But I have one of these. I even have a website. I think that there are lots of benefits to technology. And I think there are also lots of issues and challenges that are raised by technology. And so, like anything in life, like anything in this world, it is a combination of tov v'ra, of good and bad, of costs and benefits. And without being mindful, we get lost in it and we lose it. And the goal here is to figure out again, to try again, to be able to learn how to master it in this ongoing struggle. That's number one. Number two is that I'm speaking to you not lecturing and not wagging my finger. I'm speaking to you about my own struggles. I have a hard time with this. I have a hard time with self-regulating. I have a hard time being proud of the way I use technology. And so this is working on it together. In fact, to some degree, and this is like a little bit of an advantage, that sort of like a manipulative advantage that I have is that if I have something that I really want to work on, the best thing for me in the world to do is to speak about it publicly. Then I get embarrassed when everybody says, hey, you're not doing what you said. But this is a struggle that we share. And it's absolutely, absolutely not, in that sense, a lecture. The third thing is that this talk is not going to be about our kids. I know the first couple of quotes that I read you were about this one not giving an iPad to their children, and this one limiting their children's screen time, and so on and so forth. But this is not going to be about kids. There's plenty to talk about with kids, and in fact, I plan, be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach, hopefully on Tzom Gedalia, during the Aseret Yimei Tshuva, to have an unusual screening here in the shul of a documentary film called Screenagers. Screenagers. I actually first became aware of it by reading Melinda Gates' article. She references it. And you cannot watch this film on the internet. You can watch a trailer, but you can't watch it. It's a documentary film which was made by a physician who also makes documentary films. And she was writing about her own struggle as her children were becoming teenagers and how to manage their use of technology. It's a film which is about an hour. Some parts are stronger than others, but the overall education that is achieved in that film is significant. And despite the fact that it's not the typical kind of film that I would show here, and some of the images on the screen are not perfect for showing here in a shul, but I feel that the benefit, that's what I feel right now, that the benefit of having parents together with their children, or anybody, adults alone, coming and watch it, but especially parents together with their children, coming and sitting and watching this thing together, is so valuable, and the ultimate benefit, that it's worth the relatively short-term cost. And so it's a subject, but it's not today's subject. Some of you may have read, and I would encourage each and every one of you to read this article, which was published in the current issue of The Atlantic. It was published a few weeks ago. It's the September issue. That's the way some of the magazines work. It's the September issue. It's an article called "Have Smartphones Destroyed a Generation?" Millions of people have read this article already. It's an article by Jean Twenge. I think I pronounce her name correctly. Again, The Atlantic magazine. You get a couple of free downloads, don't worry. Have smartphones destroyed a generation? And a lot of the stuff may be familiar to you from other things that you've read, but it's an excellent and a compelling discussion about the effects and the changes on the iGen, the iPhone generation, people who came of age in this time. Again, discussion about children. But if I can read to you here another paragraph from this book. In 2003, a psychologist named Catherine Steiner Adair explained that many American children first encounter the digital world when they notice that their parents are missing in action. My mom is almost always on the iPad at dinner, a 7-year-old named Colin told Steiner Adair. She's always just checking. Penny, also 7, said, I always keep on asking her, let's play. And she's always texting on her phone. At 13, Angela wished her parents understood that technology isn't the whole world. It's annoying because it's like, you also have a family. How about we just spend some time together? And they're like, you can tell I'm quoting a teenager, and they're like, wait, I just want to check something on my phone. I need to call work and see what's going on. Parents with younger kids do even more damage when they constantly check their phones and tablets. Distracted parents cultivate distracted children because parents who can't focus give their children the same attentional patterns. According to the paper's lead researcher, the ability of children to sustain attention is known as a strong indicator for later success in areas such as language acquisition, problem solving, and other key cognitive development milestones. Caregivers who appear distracted or whose eyes wander a lot while their children play appear to negatively impact infants' burgeoning attention spans during a key stage of development. Parents have to worry about it as parents of their children. Our sages tell us, kshoit atzmacha. You have to make yourself true before you try to bring truth and correction to others. Got to practice what you preach. And everybody knows that nobody keeps rules that are in the category of do as I say and not as I do. What people do, what children do, what everybody does, is we model good behavior. We follow good role models. And so, any discussion, Som Gedalia or beyond, that we may have with our children will only be as successful as our talk to ourselves. And arguably and significantly, and God willing, we'll come back to this a little bit later, maybe we need to be humble parents. And when we want to broach the subject with our children, we have to say, hey, I'm struggling with this, and let's work on this together and figure this out. We all have this problem. This is, again, not me lecturing you, not a parent lecturing a child, but this is our support group of trying to figure out how to get a hold of this matter. And the final point here of introduction. So again, number one, this is not coming from an anti-technology perspective. It's from a perspective of trying to use it right. Number two, I'm sharing here my own struggle with you. Number three, this talk is not primarily about our kids, although having this talk is going to be critical to being able to improve and being able to impact our children's relationship with technology. Number four, finally, is that I'm not going to use this talk to make the case that we have to do something about this. For two reasons. First of all, I'm tired of doing that already. I'm sorry, but we've done it many times. And in fact, we've spoken about it, I've written about it. I have here, for those who are interested, a set of 3 articles that I wrote about technology, hard copies for those who wish. It's on the RabbiHauer.org website in the article section. Right, the title is Exploring the Continued Impact of Technology, Part 1, Exploring the Continued Impact of Technology, Part 2, and you guessed it, Exploring the Continued Impact of Technology, Part 3. You can read them if you like. So first reason is we've spoken about it already. And the second reason is because every time that I speak about it, I find that people appreciate it very much because they know that there's a problem. People don't need convincing. You're not here because you couldn't think of something better to do, or something else to do, on a Labor Day morning at 10 o'clock. You could be raking leaves. You're here because, hey, this is an issue. This is an issue. So I'm not going to spend my time and waste your time trying to convince you about something that you already know. Instead, what we're going to try to do here is try to figure out how to do something about it. And it's not primarily going to be about little tricks either, because those also have been suggested, have been tried, and with mixed success. So we have to somehow have some kind of new paradigm for being able to look at this. And I'm going to present you with some ideas, with 3 specific thoughts, 3 specific perspectives here. And they're, I think, all important, all necessary. Their success arguably will hinge completely and totally on the third point. Will hinge completely and totally on the third point. But all 3, I think, are important. So let's get to it. A couple of months ago, on a different legal holiday on July 4th, we were here together, many of us. We were talking about a different issue, the issue of integrity. And the last point which I tried to make at that time was that the Torah is not a to-do list. The Torah is not a list of 613 do's and don'ts. But the Torah is actually an image of what we're supposed to be. Not to do, but to be. The human being that emerges from the engagement in our Torah, in our faith, in our practice, is supposed to be someone worth emulating, someone that we ourselves would be able to be proud of. And so the first point, the first issue that I want to suggest, or method that I want to suggest for us as we approach this issue, is to spend time regularly looking in the mirror. Spend time regularly looking in the mirror, literally, figuratively. Looking at ourselves and asking ourselves the question, is this who I want to be? When we find ourselves plagued by the distractedness that our technology provides us with, always running after the latest ping, the latest vibration, always looking to see what else is new. And as a result, all the consequences of not being present for others and not being present for ourselves. Can I ask you a question? It's a rhetorical question. You'll think about it for yourselves. You don't have to give me an answer. I'll give my own answer. How is your concentration For example, I know this is like a very rabbinic example. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rabbinic. Not going to share with you a lot of Torah today. Again, 2 Torah thoughts, hopefully over the morning. But davening, which is a good opportunity for practicing, for experiencing presence and concentration. How is it? Now, I have never been proud of my davening. Always got distracted. But now, I think, and I don't think it's just because I'm older, I think I feel it. I feel it in my head. I feel it in every part of me. It's because I'm just all over the place. All over the place. To hold a thought, it's very, very difficult. Shabbos is a little bit easier, but it's still very difficult to pull out of these patterns. Who knows, maybe that's going to be the single benefit of having 3-day Yomim Tovim, like 3 weeks out of 4 coming up. Right? By that Shabbos afternoon, as a sweaty mess, but our minds will be clear. It's so hard. Are we proud of the way we sit at the dinner table? Of the way we are present for the people around us? You know, the other day, I had to fly someplace, and there was a fellow who looked like a very, very accomplished fellow. He had on an earpiece, and he was pacing back and forth through the terminal, through this section of the terminal where I was waiting by one of the gates. And he was pacing back and forth and having a very, very serious business discussion with his colleagues at work. It was loud enough for every person there to hear the details. And part of him was certainly proud of himself. Part of him was certainly proud of himself. He was a busy guy. He was an important guy. He was an accomplished guy, and he was using his time. But he was also pathetic. He was completely unaware how ridiculous his presentation was. Now that's an extreme, but how many times are you like walking down the aisle in the supermarket and carrying on a conversation and walking past people? Are we proud of that? Is that the person that we want to be? Stop and look in the mirror, or at the very least take a selfie. A Torah thought. Again, today, Emirz Hashem, just 2 quick Torah thoughts, but this one is an image which I think we're familiar with it, and I think it's something worthy of consideration. You know, Yosef HaTzadik was the example of a person who faced a tremendous, tremendous moral challenge at a very difficult time. The Rambam writes that Yosef HaTzadik surmounting that challenge is the quintessential example of a Kiddush Hashem, a sanctification of God's name. Even though it didn't make for a good story in the next day's newspaper in Mitzrayim, nobody knew about it but God and Yosef and the wife of Potiphar. Nobody knew what really happened, but it was Kiddush Hashem because it was a great, great act of the Spirit. And you know, you're familiar, that Chazal tell us that Yosef was pretty vulnerable and tempted, and may even have pursued temptation that morning. But then he pulled himself up short, and he stopped. And he stopped because something appeared to him. Demus de Yuknei Shel Abba, the image of his father, appeared to him, according to one version of Chazal, in the window. The image of his father appeared in the window. And you hear that Chazal, and we understand that it's important for us to have good role models. And sometimes they're there for us when they're present in front of us and speaking to us, and sometimes they make an indelible impact on our minds, and we can picture them and see them and understand their expectations of us even when they're not there. And that's the way we see this Chazal. But perhaps there's another way to see it, by remembering something else which our sages taught us. And that was, Eila told us Yaakov Yosef, which was that Yosef was the spitting image of Yaakov. He looked exactly like him. He looked exactly like him. And perhaps when Yosef saw the image of his father in his window, and I agree that this piece is a little bit of conjecture, it wasn't an open space in the wall, but it was a glass window. And when he looked in the window, what he actually was seeing was a reflection of himself. And that reminded him of what his father looked like. And then he thought, hey, I look like my father. My father was my model. This is what I want to be. But if I do this, is this looking like my father? He was really looking in the mirror. He wasn't just remembering some important, whether disciplinary or inspiring personality in his life. He was looking at himself and he said, this is not the person that I want to be. I want to not just have the facial features of my father Yaakov, but I want to also resemble him in terms of his character, in terms of his integrity. And I think that for us, when we do stop and we think about it, and we look at ourselves, we say, I don't want to be doing this. This is not what I want to be. I find it far more inspiring to be a person who partakes and looks at something on occasion, not in the middle of anything and everything that I'm doing. I don't like being absent. I don't like being in a meeting or in a conversation or in a shiur and getting that little hum and being taken out, because when we look at it, we are out of it. We are out of it. I've sat in too many meetings with people doing it, and I've done it myself in too many meetings, to imagine that we're really able to multitask our brains. And it's known, there's tons of research. Again, I'm not going into the details. I don't have to convince you. You know it. That's why you're here. So instead, stop and say, tell me something. I look around this table at whatever particular gathering, and there are people who every time they're not speaking, they're looking at their phone. Every moment that there's a break, they're texting somebody. And then there are some people who are sitting there, and their phone, you can't even see it, because, the studies say that me having this on the table, even with the face down, provides a distraction. What I really need to do is I really need to put it over here. Or tuck it away very, very firmly and quietly in my pocket as a statement. It's just us. And that person, before the meeting starts, isn't dashing off 3 last texts, but before the meeting starts, he's making small talk with the people next to him so that he can create some kind of a connection and a bond. And when it's over, again, his hands aren't shaking, and he's not like, first thing I got to do is this. Let's talk a little bit more, and then eventually he gets back to his machine. That's the person you want to be, or you want to be my friend strolling back and forth in the airport, or the furious, every moment I have, texter, consulter, reader of emails. Which one do you want to be? Which person is the person who strikes you more as a person who's living his life in the driver's seat? Which person at the playground do you want to be? The one who's pushing the swing while holding the phone in the other hand? Or the one who's pushing the swing and saying, okay, this is how you pump. Or, you sure you want to go this high? Oh, when I was a child and I went this high, I used to get a little dizzy. What do you see from up there that I don't see from up here? I've shared too many times that we live on Western Run. It's a beautiful, beautiful street. There are houses on one side, there's trees and a creek on the other side. A lot of people walk down our street. A lot of mothers with strollers walk down our street. We used to see all the time mothers with strollers walking down and speaking to their children about the trees and the flowers and the snow and whatever else it was. And now we see them walking down the street, pushing their stroller, getting their exercise, probably have a Fitbit on also, and talking to somebody else. Which one do you want to be? Which one do you want to be? Let's look in the mirror. I looked in the mirror, wasn't so happy. Wasn't so happy at all. So, tried to tinker, to make some changes. And I hope they'll last. We'll talk about them a little bit later. But the bottom line is that I have to keep looking in the mirror and saying, is this what I want to look like? So let's forget for a minute the details. Now, I think there's a value to reading about this stuff on a regular basis, because when you read about it, it helps you to stop and to look in the mirror. But the fundamental thing is, am I the person that I want to be when it comes to this particular struggle? The second piece is a piece which I got from this book and from some other related readings. What this book is mostly about, which is why I don't know that it's a must reading for everybody, is it's about addictions. It's about behavioral addiction. It's talking about the shift from substance abuse to behavioral addictions, which many believe is there and is the case. But what I learned about was substance, the history of controlled substances, in a way that I wasn't fully aware before, and it's probably just my own ignorance. Many of you are probably familiar with this. But did you know that Freud, besides all of his writings about psychoanalysis, he did some major writing trying to push people to use cocaine? He tried to push people to use cocaine because he found it to be a wonderful, wonderful medicine. It was helpful for many things. In fact, there was a gentleman named John Pemberton in the late 19th century. He fought in the Civil War, and he was seriously wounded in the Civil War, but he survived. And he survived, and he treated his pain with morphine, and so on and so forth. Eventually, this Pemberton came up with a formula, and the formula had ended up being Coca-Cola to some degree. But Coca-Cola had coca at that point in time, and he made the case for all the wonderful benefits of this thing. Others, physicians preceded him. The head, Robert Christison, who was the 44th president of the British Medical Association, was also pushing it. And the reason was because the truth is, it was, for people, a wonder drug. This Christison actually, Lo Yaleinu Rachmana Litzlan, Hashem should spare us, but he used it, as he was suffering from issues of aging. He took the drug when he was 80 years old, and he felt so invigorated, he set out for a long walk. 9 hours and 15 miles later, he returned home, and he wrote that he was neither hungry nor thirsty. The next morning, he awoke feeling fit and ready to tackle the new day. I'll tell you, I was thinking about it. Great benefits. Parkinson's sufferers, right? Great benefits. Great immediate benefits. And then each one after the other, discovered that for all those immediate short-term benefits which came, they ended up getting sucked into something that the costs way outweighed the benefits. Now, it's an interesting thing, because you may know that we have a major opioid epidemic in our country right now, and a large part of the blame for it is the reintroduction of opioids in medicine, because they do have great effects. That medical marijuana, it's not ridiculous, but it's not a chiddush, it's not something new either. That's how it got started, and then access, etc., made it get out of control. So there's an issue here. Again, I don't mean to oversimplify a major public policy debate. I don't have a strong and firm personal position on medical marijuana. I do have one on legalized marijuana, but we'll have to save that for another legal holiday. we're willing to overcome, and again I read here from this book, we're willing to overlook its costs for its many gleaming benefits. For on-demand entertainment portals, car services and cleaning companies, Facebook and Twitter, Instagram and Snapchat, Reddit and Imgur, BuzzFeed and Mashable, I don't even know what some of these things are, online gambling sites, internet video platforms, streaming music hubs, 100-hour work weeks, power naps, 4-minute gym workouts. There are lots of benefits. Cheap airline tickets, shopping without having to go to the mall, soon shopping without having to go to the food store. Benefits. Costs. I think the second thing that we have to be aware of, we have to think about, is that as we absorb and get involved in these new things, to which there are benefits, we must always think about the costs that are going along with it. It's not just an advance in technology is an advance. It's a step forward, and it is fraught. It's fraught with challenges. Now, I'm not telling you something specific. It's even less specific than the first point. It's meant, what I mean here to do is sort of, instead of giving like a detail of a specific thing, but to create mindset issues, things of the way we are to view ourselves. So number one is when we look at ourselves as a result of all of this, ourselves and our interaction with this technology. Are we proud of the result? Are we happy with ourselves? And that should be a great motivator. It shouldn't be a depressant. Healthy, as we try to cultivate in ourselves healthy minds, it's not when we look at ourselves we say, "Oy, look at where we are." It instead is supposed to encourage us to say, "Hey, this is where I am, but I can be better." Second little piece of Torah as an illustration. One of the great innovators of technology in the history of mankind, one of the first great innovators, was a man named Noach. He entered a world that had been drastically changed, made much harder. When Adam Harishon ate from the tree of knowledge, Hashem cursed the earth on account of man, and he made it very hard to produce anything from the ground. B'zeh asapecha tochal lechem, by the sweat of your brow you will eat bread. V'kotz v'dardar tatzmiach lach. You'll plant one thing, another thing will come out. It won't be smooth. It won't be easy. It will be very, very difficult. It was so difficult that his son, who went into the agriculture business, was referred to as an Oved Adama. Cain was referred to as an Oved Adama, which early Rishonim understand as a slave to the earth. You're going to try to produce something from the earth, it's hard. Hevel, he was a shepherd. A roa is called a leader. He's not a slave. He just walked and, played his flute and the sheep followed. But to work the ground, you're a slave to the ground. And when Noach was born, he was called Noach because his father anticipated that he would bring relief. This child is going to transform things. He's going to bring us comfort from all that anguish from the accursed earth. And in fact, Noach later in his life is referred to as not a slave of the earth, Oved Adama, but as Ish Ha'adama, the master of the earth. Right? Vayochel Noach Ish Ha'adama. Noach, the master of the earth, went out and he planted a vineyard. And our sages say, you know why he was able to do that? Because his technological creation was the plow. Noach created the plow. It made it much easier to farm. Imagine farming with a fork. He created the plow. And because he created the plow, he could actually create a vineyard. Instead of doing little things and maybe planting a little seed here, a plant there, you can make a vineyard. You have a vineyard, you can make wine. You Can't make wine, so simply. So that was what Noach was able to do as a result of mastery, technology. And there was a cost. What was the cost? What did his technology give him? It gave him wine, which of course has its benefits. We use wine on a regular occasion to make kiddush and to make weddings and all kinds of things. But Noach went stone drunk in a humiliating way. This was the first instance, one might say, of a technology whose benefits were embraced without awareness of the costs. And this was also the first instance of someone who was given a mandate to say, you can reverse all the difficulty. Now, how would we reverse the difficulty? Where did the difficulty come from? It came from the fact that man who was great, when God created us, we were great. We were the image of God. And so, of course, the earth just delivered to us its bounty. We were great. And then we fell. Now, there are two ways you can deal with this fall. There are two ways you can remedy the situation. One is, let's build a better mousetrap. Let's find some technological fix to the mess that we're in. And the other one is to make ourselves great again. Hey, that's a great phrase. To make ourselves great again. And then maybe the world will function better with us. Maybe it'll do more for us. When Noach's parents had that dream about this child that would fix everything and make it back, were they dreaming that he would invent the plow? Or were they dreaming that he would reinvent what a person is supposed to look like when he looks in the mirror? Which one is it going to be? It reminds me of the famous story of the city of Chelm. Right? The city of Chelm, there was a bridge, and it was a very, very rickety bridge. And people would cross over the bridge, and they would fall off, and they would fall into the river, and their lives were endangered, and they had to be rescued all the time. And so the wise men of Chelm got together, and they considered what they could do about this issue, and they decided to build an ambulance and fire station at the foot of the bridge. Technology provides us with solutions to all kinds of things. It brings us cost. If we're not going to bring ourselves to be, first and foremost, people who we want to be, better people, greater people, we're inevitably going to fall. We have to think big. It's too ubiquitous. It's too present everywhere. It's too much part of society for us to be able to just tinker with it and be able to find a solution. We need to look at ourselves and try to be Adam Kodem Hachet, man not swept up and swallowed up yet by technology. And as we approach technology, as we look at it and we see its benefits, always ask ourselves about its costs, because it's always that way. There are wondrous things which come from it. There are difficult things which come from it. And no time in the foreseeable future is it going to be banned like a narcotic. It's going to be there. And so it behooves us to have a level-headed approach to it and to constantly consider its costs at the same time as we embrace its benefits. Now the third, which is the critical piece, is that all this talk, these are good ideas. I think they're good ideas. I think they're important perspectives. And, it's Elul. Maybe as in this time of Elul, when we're trying to make ourselves better, we'll take it seriously for a little while. But if past experience is an indicator of future results, we'll be with it for a while and then we'll drop off. Is that only my experience, or is that everybody else's experience as well? it's too hard. It's too easy to slip back into things. So what can we do to be able to make some lasting change in this matter? And I think, and this is what those who have thought and worked and written about change, what most of them would say is that it's impossible to do it by yourself. It's impossible to do it by yourself. You need a support system. In the world of Musar, in the world of self-development known as the Musar movement, the way it really works, the way it really worked isn't for a person just to study from a Musar book. The way it works is for a person to get together with a bunch of other people on a regular basis, to have a chabura, and to say, okay, we're working on this thing, whatever it is. Now, here's an idea of an exercise of something that we can work on to improve in this particular area. And we're all going to work on it for the next week or for the next 2 weeks until the next time that we get together. And the next time we get together, you know what we're going to do? We're not going to move on to the next subject. We're going to say, hey, how did it go? And we report to each other. And we're accountable to each other. And that helps. It helps to have something with constant reminder. It helps to have something with personal investment and involvement, with accountability. Now, how do you create that accountability? So, I want to share, with permission, some of my own personal struggle. I don't mean permission for myself. I grant myself permission to share this struggle. But I'm also going to share, I asked my wife, she allows me to share this as well. So I have this problem of constant communication. Get a lot of communication of different kinds, like we all do. And you need to respond to the communication. Over the years, of course, a lot has shifted from telephone to email. A lot of communication comes over email. It's not always responded to in an email. If it's technical, yes, but there's nothing like speaking to people on the phone. But email's shorter and quicker, and you don't get a busy signal or a voicemail when you call somebody, when you email somebody. It just goes through unless they've used up their quota. It's constant. I find it constant and very, very deeply distracting. I would typically sit down to work and have Outlook open on my desk, and it makes a little tiny sound or something whenever something comes, and you need to see the world could be coming to an end, and of course, as you know, it depends on me. So I'm trying again something which I did before, and that is to severely limit that. First of all, I have this smartphone, which I don't want to take out to distract anybody, but it's in this pocket, exactly where I left it. It's not a magic trick that I'm going to pull out of the other pocket. On the smartphone, you know, when you go on the screen, so one of the first icons on the screen is the email icon. And it has a little circle with a number in the corner of how many emails you haven't opened yet. So I eliminated that icon from my screen. I can still get email on my phone if I need to, but it requires me to take 3 steps. I also eliminated the automatic reminder, which just comes as a standard setting, which is that whenever you turn on the screen of your iPhone, it says you got an email or you got a something. I eliminated that, so it doesn't remind me of it every time, you know, that it pops up. And I've defined for myself specific times to do email. So in the morning, I will take a quick glance, because unfortunately I do sometimes deal with emergencies. You know, sometimes deal with emergencies I have to respond to. Take a very, very quick 1-minute glance to see if there's anything more urgent than Joseph A. Banks selling 3 suits for the price of 2, that has to be addressed immediately. Mamish, like a minute glance. And then nothing until I finish with, whatever shiurim and things are going on in the morning and davening and so on and so forth. And then afterwards, when it's done, I have a 15 to 20 minute major email session, right, which would include, scanning the news and responding to people who have been in touch. Can't necessarily get back in touch with everybody during this window. Can't necessarily read everything you have to read during this window. If there's a significant something of substance, so then it gets taken out of the email and gets whatever printed or whatever else it is. I gotta, read different things, but that's it. And then through the day, one other sort of like 10-minute one in the middle of the day around lunch, but once in the morning, quick look, no more than 5 minutes. In the afternoon, no more than 5 minutes. Maybe around the early evening, no more than 5 minutes. And at the end of the day, another 15 minutes. But the goal is not more than an hour total, period, and not constant. The main thing is not constant. Defined, quarantined places for this to be looked at and to use at. And it's very, very beneficial. It's very, very beneficial. Time. Place. A few weeks ago, I had been busy all day, whatever. I had to travel someplace, and I came back in the evening, and I really was incommunicado with most of the things during the day. And I said, at whatever time it was late. I said, I'm gonna go now to my room, and I just gotta catch up. I just gotta catch up for the day. And I went to my room, and I sat down on my bed, and I started to catch up, to go through whatever the oodles of communication which had come through over the day. And I was going through it, and my wife came into the room, and I was going through it, and she started to say something, to talk to me about something, and I was going through it, and it didn't even register that she was saying something to me. It didn't even register. It's not the first time. It's probably not the last time. But it was the wrong place. It was the wrong place. I always encourage people that as busy as life gets, when the day's over and you're going to sleep at night, it's good to take a couple of minutes and just to talk to your roommate. It's a good time of connection. And even if you had tendency to go to sleep later than the other one or earlier than the other one, so whoever it is, the other one could stop and have that conversation. And here I am, and I'm doing my work and absorbed in it in my room. And it was not nice. It was not right. It was not the right place. It might have been necessary. So that was Kabbalah number 2, was I'm not looking at email in my room. It saves me from a lot of things, a lot of consequential benefits. I'm not looking in my room. And the next time that thing happened, so I say, okay, and many times it happens, I come home at night and I haven't had a chance to finish my work in the office and I need that 10, 15-minute slot at the end to do it. I sit down in one of 2 rooms, in the dining room or in the den, and that's where it is, not in the kitchen, right? The dining room we eat in on Shabbos. Thank God for Shabbos, right? That's not a place where there's a temptation of doing it regularly. The kitchen we eat in during the week. I don't want to be doing emails in the kitchen. Now, 2 Kabbalahs, 2 things to undertake that can make a real difference in part of this, in this thing of getting control of it. Getting control of it is, I decide when I do it. It doesn't own me. I will be successful with neither without the help of others. So when I made this, I said to my wife, I said, but please help me. If you see me slipping, if you see me doing it, stop me. I want you to. It won't be you being a nagging person. It will be welcome, because I can't do this by myself. Anything that we've undertaken successfully to grow in and to change in, we haven't done by ourselves. People support each other. Friends can support each other. It doesn't have to be your family. Friends can support each other. We know we have this issue. Let's think, what is going to be the thing that we're going to fiddle with to change? There are lists of these things. You'll find them in these articles. You'll find them in other places. Don't charge your phone next to your bed. Don't even bring it. Certain areas where you won't bring it. Dinner time. Whatever it is, whatever the specifics of the detail is, do it as a group. Undertake it as a chevra, as a chabura. 12-step groups are effective for millions of people. They're not. The 12-step books aren't effective for millions of people. It's getting together. It's the feedback. It's the accountability. And I think that that's something that is critical if we're going to move forward. The American Association of Pediatrics puts out these contracts, family contracts. You fill it in. You decide what it's going to say. You decide what you're going to do. But do it together. That Screen Agers film, ends with the chief characters, the documentary maker and her daughter, understanding that, it didn't help anything for her to tell her child what to do. They had to sit and think and talk about it and come to a consensus about what made sense to both of them, because this is logical stuff. Our teenagers are intelligent. If we say, blah, 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 you can't do this, you can't do that, then they kick back. But instead, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about it and decide together to work on this issue together. And what yours is going to look like may not be exactly what mine is going to look like, but the general picture of self-control is going to be very similar. Very, very similar. So those are the three fundamental points that I wanted to share. And the third one is the one it all stops on. The first two, maybe you'll find other things that inspire you. Or maybe you don't want to go with inspiration. You want to go with little things, fiddling. There's definitely a place for those things. I just shared with you a couple of them. But I think fundamentally, we have to be proud of ourselves as people. We want our children to be proud of themselves as people. In the end, they look at it, they want different. They want something different. Remember that most kids aren't happy with themselves, with the way it's going either. So the first thing is to look in the mirror and to decide regularly, is this what I want to look at? And the second is to have a proper, wise view towards technology, that it is a gift and it is also a tremendous cost. And we have to learn how to be able to manage it, because if it doesn't, at some point we will, not us, not the Frummies, not the Jewish people, the world will need to outlaw it. And we can't do it by ourselves. Find a partner. Do it as a family exercise. Do it with friends. Do it with colleagues. Do it with the person who you daven next to. Right? If you find yourself, men, finishing Shemona Esrei, and then, pulling out your phone to see if anything important happened while you were davening, if the Lord has answered your prayers. Od he medabrin v'ani ashma. Right? So you sit in the same seat, turn to the person next to you, say, you notice I have this problem, could you do me a favor? Could you just remind me when I'm not just to me, don't bang on the table, just remind me. Maybe go to somebody, a friend, ask them for help. Ask them for help. We can all do it with each other. You don't have to live in the same house. I would add, I would like very much to do this and have this happen and welcome help. But I would like to have actually a list. And I'm going to pass around right now this piece of paper of emails. You can write down your email. Or if you don't want to, just send an email to the following address: Intelligence, INTECHIGENCE. Right? That's intelligence and technology in a word. They can actually be brought together. Intelligence at bjse.org. And from there, Mirat Hashem, hopefully we will be able to share with each other reminders, create some kind of a platform for that kind of discussion. If you send it and the email address isn't working yet, then send the email. You'll try it right now. It may not be perfectly working yet. Send an email to me, mhauer at bjse.org, MHAUER at bjse.org. And those who want to write down your names and emails, you can pass it around, and we can do that. But we will have to help each other in this matter and create frameworks to help each other. I want to mention one other note in closing just before we wrap up, which is that there are many who struggle, as you know, with some of the more ugly stuff on the internet. The matters of pornography and of Kedusha and things like that. And some people in that realm have asked for some kind of a framework. And I'm going to try, Be'ezus Hashem, to have as well a periodic chabura, just something to be mechazik, to strengthen people, in being able to maintain that and to really derive the benefits of addressing that issue, which people struggle with. But these are the thoughts. I think, and with this I conclude, that it's the Yamim Neiroim, and we're here to try to make ourselves better people. And everybody has their issues. But if society has an issue, and again, this is not a Jewish issue, it's a world issue. If humanity has an issue that has loomed so large, we can't ignore it. We can't ignore it in trying to make ourselves better. We need to do something about it. And we can't keep trying to do the same thing and expect different results. So let's try perhaps to do something different. Let's try perhaps. Maybe these 3 points speak to you. But without the third, again, forget it. Let's just don't do it alone. Don't do it. Don't even try to do it completely by yourself. Let's share. Let's address it together. And Be'ezus Hashem, we will find ourselves prouder of ourselves, prouder of what we see when we look in the mirror, prouder of matching the Mustiyukno Shel Abba in a better way. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for sharing.